Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. I am Bryson Carver, as always. Probably the most loaded show we've had all year. I'm not even kidding. NFL topics, obviously NBA topics. The Milwaukee Bucks are your new NBA champions. Giannis, the deserving finals MVP. You got college football topics. Oklahoma and Texas may move to the SEC. I'm here to tell you why that is not going to happen, as well as Jerry Jones' surprising revelation about the 1990s Dallas Cowboys, as well as the Los Angeles Lakers are rumored to possibly be looking at a trade for a star player, and I think it would be the single dumbest move they can make this offseason. So I'll get into that all later on the show, but of course we'll start with the NBA Finals. The Milwaukee Bucks are your new NBA champions. They won Game 6, as I said they would, 105-98, excuse me. This was, I would say, one of the more surprising championships. We know what the Bucks represent. Last two seasons, they had the MVP and simultaneously had the best record in all of basketball. But this year, you look at the obstacles in the Eastern Conference. The Brooklyn Nets, who they beat. The 76ers, who had a better record. Right? So you look beyond that. You look at the team that they play in the first round, the Miami Heat, who crushed them last year in the second round in 5 games. To me, this is all about one guy. And I hate to make sports about one player, but the NBA, more than any other league, is about the stars. The NFL, you can be a pretty solid football team, not a championship contender, but a solid football team, maybe even a playoff team, if you don't have the quarterback. Look at Washington. Look at the Washington football team. They had 4 quarterbacks this season. And albeit in a crappy division, they made the playoffs, and to their credit, gave Tampa Bay, the eventual Super Bowl champions, all they could handle in the wild card game. But this Bucks championship is about one man, Giannis Antetokounmpo. He deserves to have his name said, because that was incredible. I hope everybody watching that game Tuesday night got to realize and recognize and savor what was one of the greatest single game performances in an NBA Finals ever. What was also one of the greatest championship clinching performances by a singular athlete ever. 50 points, 14 rebounds, 5 blocks. That's the stuff of legend. Years from now, they'll talk about the Game 6 against the Phoenix Suns in his home building, where Giannis Antetokounmpo dropped 50 points, grabbed 14 boards, and blocked 5 shots. For this series, I mean, these numbers are video game-esque. 35 points a game, 13 rebounds a game, 5 assists a game, 1.8 blocks, 1.8 steals. What do you guys say about that? And what's kind of amazing about the Bucks, and this kind of goes into another point that I'll be getting into a little later in this segment. But when you look at the Bucks, they shot 45% for the field and 22% from 3. And what have I said all season and all playoffs about Mike Budenholzer? Is that he refuses to make adjustments. Is that the Bucks just, it doesn't matter how bad they're shooting. They just keep jacking threes despite having the most dominant player within 5 feet of the basket since the Diesel himself, Shaquille O'Neal. Yet they just keep jacking threes. Well, amazingly, it didn't cost him. How? I don't know. Maybe it has to do with the fact that Giannis had the best game of his life in the biggest game of his life. Chris Middleton, though he was fairly dreadful for most of the night, hit a massive shot, probably hit the shot of the night. With the Bucks up 4, about a minute left, Phoenix is trying to rally a little bit. Seemed like they're starting to seize momentum, and Middleton hits a tough fall-away shot. Right side, knocks it down. They're up 6, and the game is essentially over. I'll get to the Suns portion in just a second. But when it comes to the best player in the world debate, that's one we've had in the NBA for probably the last 25, 30 years. It wasn't really a debate when Jordan played, right? Up until 2 or 3 years ago, it wasn't really a debate when LeBron was in his prime. Last 2, 3 years, we don't know. Is it still LeBron? Is it Kevin Durant? It's Giannis. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best basketball player on earth. LeBron is going to be 37 years old at the beginning of the season. I think he's going to have an excellent year. Why? Gets a full off season, gets to rest that ankle. Clearly, I mean, he was playing excellent basketball on hardly any off season until the ankle injury. He came back, he wasn't the same. Steph Curry, y'all know I love me some Steph Curry, right? Best point guard absolutely in the league. I think he's clearly the second greatest point guard ever to the great Magic Johnson. But what do we know about the NBA? Bigs mostly dominate. The taller you are, usually the more successful you are. That's not to diminish guards like Steph, like Damian Lillard. But who are the best players? LeBron, Giannis, KD, right? Kawhi even. Kawhi's about 6'7". Steph 6'3". Dame is 6'1", I think. When you look at Kevin Durant, now KD is the guy who I've said for about a year and a half is the best player in the world. But when I sat back and thought about it, I don't think so anymore. Now, I think KD's number 2. I still believe KD is the most skilled offensive player the game of basketball has ever seen, without a doubt. Can get a shot off anywhere. At 7 feet tall and moves like a guard, it is not fair. But this year, in the playoffs, KD had a 3-2 lead on Giannis. He had a Game 7 in his home building. You say, well, he was inches away from the game winner in regulation. True. But in overtime, he didn't make a shot. He didn't score a point. Matter of fact, he airballed the game winner, while Giannis dropped 40 on the road in a Game 7. Well, you can't just judge it off one game. Okay, I won't. You know a lot of people do these blind resumes with quarterbacks in the NFL. Well, here's a blind resume. It's not really that blind. I'm already telling you the 2 players. Kevin Durant, 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs, 1 regular season MVP. Giannis, 1 championship, 1 finals MVP, 2 regular season MVPs, and a defensive player of the year. He now joins a very elite club. Only 3 players in the history of the game have won an MVP, a defensive player of the year, and a finals MVP. Their names, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon, and yes, Michael Jordan. So when I look at it and I'm saying, and Giannis is only 26, that's what's scary. I don't even know if he's in his prime yet. And something we have to evaluate with Giannis. And this is something I got to do too. You know, listen, I got to come out of my show and admit when I'm wrong. Because I didn't think the Bucks would beat the Nets. And I didn't think they beat the Suns going into both of those series. Matter of fact, in the first round, I thought they'd get taken 7 games by the Miami Heat. Boy, was I wrong on that. But we got to evaluate how we think of superstars. And I think we've run into this problem before with Steph Curry, is that there's got to be one way to be a superstar. Not necessarily. Why is LeBron a superstar? Well, he's an elite scorer, elite passer, and still, even at this stage of his career, solid defender. Why is Kevin Durant a superstar? Well, I just detailed how he's the most unstoppable offensive player I think the game has ever seen. By the way, he's also a really good defensive player. Steph, while he's not the defensive player that KD or even LeBron is, he could shoot better than any human has ever shot a basketball. He's a great ball handler, and he's a great leader. Giannis, while he cannot shoot, that has already been established a long time ago, years ago. He's already got the Defensive Player of the Year, so we know he averaged 1.8 blocks in the series and had 5 in the clincher. He had the most iconic block in the finals since LeBron's in Game 7, maybe second all-time to LeBron's Game 7 block against my Warriors. And while he's not the shooter that Steph, obviously, KD, obviously, and even LeBron is, he can do pretty much everything else. I mean, DeAndre Ayton, God bless him. I feel bad for him in this series, having to take Giannis one-on-one for 6 straight games. I mean, Giannis abused that young man down low. Abused him. And so, outside of shooting, Giannis is good at pretty much everything else. He's a solid ball handler. Like, he really is. I've always said on the show, I've always said this about Giannis, is that he's a better passer than people give him credit for. He always averages about 5 or 6 assists a year. That's the same as Steph, essentially. And Steph's the point guard. So, Giannis doesn't get enough credit for his passing ability. Obviously, he's unstoppable down low. And obviously, his length, his height, his effort. He's a great rebounder. And as long and quick as he is there a better shot blocker outside of Rudy Gobert in the game? Outside of Rudy Gobert and Miles Turner, is there a better shot blocker than Giannis that can cover more ground than him? I mean, people won't remember this play, but Game 1 on a bum knee, he goes opposite corner and chases down Mikal Bridges on the other end in a block that was eerily similar to LeBron's against the Warriors. So we can't just say a superstar has to be a certain way. There's unique ways to be a superstar, just like there's unique ways to be an artist or a teacher or a podcaster. There's no one way to do anything. If you can be elite at something in your own way, which Giannis clearly is, you deserve that superstar nickname and title. And that was incredible. No ifs, ands, or buts. That was, I don't want to go so far as to say it's the greatest finals performance ever, although it's in that conversation, no doubt. But boy, I may have to mull this over the weekend and talk about it Monday because, wow. So let's shift now to the Phoenix Suns. First of all, hats off to that organization, that squad. James Jones, general manager, what a job he's done since he's been there, turning a laughingstock, literally a laughingstock of the NBA. They haven't been to the playoffs in 11 years up until this year. Hats off to Monty Williams, who is the very definition of class after a loss. I mean, we all saw the tape. He went into the Bucks locker room, put his arm around Giannis, congratulated the entire team. Had a very emotional press conference after the game. Everybody knows what Monty's been through in his personal life. Just impossible not to root for. I mean, genuinely. And he's a great coach. Great coach. He's got a long time coaching in Phoenix ahead of him. Wouldn't be shocked if he got an extension, by the way. And to Devin Booker, first playoff run, and he did that. Man, Phoenix, you got a lot more good playoff runs under Devin Booker. And Chris Paul, who I'm going to get into in just a second. His deepest playoff run. Okay? The veterans, Jay Crowder. Right, the young kids, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton. And so, if you'd have told me the Suns, I would have been obviously less shocked. The Bucks would have been in the finals this year than the Suns. But here's the tough truth for the Suns, starting with Chris Paul. Just completed his 16th year. He's 36 years old. He's likely, all the reports say, he's going to opt out of the last year of his contract. He's going to be a free agent. Multiple reports are saying he's looking for a 3-year deal worth about $90 million. if I were any team, including Phoenix, I wouldn't touch that. Because by the time that contract's over, he'll be 39 years old. If we feel like we saw stages of this playoff run where he looks kind of old, what's he going to look like 3 years from now? And so for Chris, it's really his last shot to get a big deal. And, if at this point, Chris Paul is a decision to make. Add more money to the money that he's already got. And he's amassed a lot in his NBA career, obviously with the Hornets and with the Clippers and the Rockets and the Thunder and the Suns, as well as many other off-court endeavors. Or does he say, you know what? I've got my money. I came close this year, 2 wins away. I want a championship. I want to win a championship. Like Chris Paul talked about this with Damian Lillard, right? Damian Lillard possibly wants out of Portland. The biggest fear for NBA players in regards to their playing legacy is to be on that greatest players who never won a ring list. They don't want to be in that category with some great players. Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, John Stockton, Karl Malone. They don't want to be there. They want to have jewelry, right? After playing. And so that's a decision Chris Paul has to make. I thought he showed stages in the playoffs where it's like, oh, okay, he's turning back the clock right now. He's looking like New Orleans Hornets Chris Paul, or even at times LA Clippers Chris Paul. And then there were times in these finals, like Game 4, where, man, he looks old right now. It's tough. It's tough. He's aging. He's obviously not in his prime anymore. And something I've always given Chris Paul credit for on this show is that everywhere he goes, they win instantly. Everywhere. He's Urban Meyer without the championships. Everywhere he goes. Hornets, they won. They went to the playoffs and gave the Lakers in the first round all they could handle. He left. They were garbage. Clippers, that team had never seen a 50-win season in their history. They had 5 straight with Chris Paul. He leaves. They miss the playoffs the very next year. Okay, he goes to Houston. Right? That first year, after being a 3 seed the year prior, they had Chris Paul. They had the best record in basketball, and some, I don't, but some believe that if he doesn't injure his hamstring in Game 5 against the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals, that the Houston Rockets would have won the 2018 championship, as well as he was playing. He was dragging James Harden in that series, covering up a lot of Harden's flaws because of how he was playing. He left. Rockets 2 years later have the second pick in the draft. He gets traded to OKC. OKC was going to tank. They had just traded Russell Westbrook. They had just traded Paul George. They were going to tank. They instead, in the Western Conference, made the playoffs as the 5 seed and came that close to beating Houston in the first round. A much better Houston team in the first round at that. And he goes to Phoenix, who hadn't been to the playoffs in over a decade. And in 1 year, they came 2 wins away from an NBA championship. And so you do have to have mixed feelings about this if you're the Suns. But what you can also say is Chris served his purpose. Right? He mentored some of the young guys. DeAndre Ayton has spoken glowingly of him, as has Devin Booker. He served his purpose. If he wants to come back on a 1-year deal, great. We'll even give him the $30 million that he wants for 1 year and try and run it back. But if he wants 3, I don't think Phoenix will do it. And the harsh reality for the Suns moving forward is the West is going to be loaded next year. Because now you're going to have a rested Lakers team. LeBron and AD coming back healthy. AD is the question mark, health-wise, as always. But it'll be healthier coming into this year than he was the previous year, coming off their championship. Golden State's going to be back. We all saw what Steph did. Okay, so you get Clay back. Draymond, who was top 5 in steals and assists this year. Andrew Wiggins, a 20-point-per-game scorer. And what did they do with the 2 picks? 2 lottery picks we'll see a week from today. Okay. You look at the Clippers are a question mark. If Kawhi comes back, I don't think they'll be much of a force next year because even if Kawhi does re-sign there, he's hurt. He's got an ACL tear. He won't be back until April at best. And then you look at Denver when Jamal Murray comes back. Jokic, though I didn't think he deserved it, was the MVP. Michael Porter Jr., loved him since college. Thought he was the steal of the draft in 2018. And we see how he's developing. Okay, you get Jamal Murray back, Jokic back, Porter back. They'll add some depth to the team. They've got cap space. Denver's going to be right back in the mix next year. Don't forget they were in the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago. Okay, Utah. Though I don't think they're a championship team yet, look how much better Donovan Mitchell gets year in and year out. I would trade Rudy Gobert to get a second star with Donovan Mitchell and try and put yourselves in the championship picture. So there's a lot of teams now. Memphis, by the way. Look what they did this season. They weren't healthy pretty much the entire year until Jaren Jackson came back. They got in a roll, ended up making the playoffs. Okay, Memphis is getting better. So there's going to be a lot of teams, a lot of roadblocks that Phoenix has to go through. And do they want to tie themselves to Chris Paul for the next 3 years? I don't think they do. I wouldn't. I'd do it for 1 year. 2, I don't know. I don't know if I do 2 years. Because at the end, he's 38. Again, if there were times he looked old this year, what's he going to look like 2 years from now? Okay, Father Time's undefeated, as we all know. And sadly, unless he takes a pay cut and joins a team that's already ready to win, that's probably the closest Chris Paul will ever come to a championship. So that's the harsh reality that the Suns face moving forward. Now, last topic on the Bucks before we move on to some Jerry Jones. I'll go ahead and phrase it this way. There's a lot of talk. Is there an asterisk next to the Bucks title? It seems like we get this every single year with the champion. And if you look at history, not just the NBA, but any sport, that the champion, they need breaks. It is impossible to win a championship and every bad call goes against you. Or every big injury that happens to your team. Like it's just not realistic. It's like the Warriors in 2019. Like if they were healthy, they'd have blown through Toronto in the finals. But they weren't healthy. They didn't get the breaks health-wise that Toronto did. Toronto won the championship. And so there's a lot you could say. The Lakers last year, it was a, asterisk because it was in a bubble. Well, there were 15 other teams in the playoffs that played in that exact same bubble. Lakers just dominated it better than everybody else. Okay, go back to 2018 in the Western Conference Finals that I was just talking about a second ago when Chris Paul went down after Game 5 of the hamstring injury. Well, Rockets had a 3-2 lead. And they had a 17-point lead in Game 6 and got blown out by nearly 30. And they had a 15-point lead at halftime of Game 7 on their home floor and proceeded to miss 27 straight threes and lose by 9. That's on Houston. It's on Golden State. Golden State just took advantage of Houston's mistakes. Okay, a couple of years ago, the infamous 3-1 comeback by the Cavs over the Warriors. Draymond got suspended. Steph had a bad knee. Iguodala had back spasms. Bogut got hurt in Game 5. Cleveland was healthy. A year prior to that, Golden State was healthy. Cleveland. Kevin Love got hurt in the first round and was gone for the rest of the playoffs. Kyrie Irving, kneecap injury in Game 1, done for the rest of the series. And LeBron dragged Matthew Dellavedova, Tristan Thompson, and Timofey Mozgov to a Game 6 of the NBA Finals. Every champion gets breaks. Every champion gets a little bit lucky. There's nothing wrong with that. Tampa Bay this year in the NFC Championship game was up 8. We all know what Green Bay did. 4th and goal from, I think they were at the 8-yard line. With 2 minutes left, they opted to go field goal rather than with the most valuable player of the National Football League, Aaron Rodgers, go for a touchdown and, subsequently a 2-point conversion to try and tie it. They kicked the field goal. Tampa Bay got it back, and they ran the clock out. And then, a couple weeks later, Kansas City had injuries to both of their tackles, and it showed. Pat Mahomes was just running for his life for the entire football game. Okay, so the Milwaukee Bucks, people say, well, in the second round, Kyrie Irving got hurt in game 4. James Harden got hurt in game 1, came back in game 5, and was never himself. And so it was just KD pretty much. True, but Kyrie Irving always gets hurt. Like always. And James Harden, while he doesn't get hurt near as frequently as Kyrie, even when he's been healthy, he's been hot garbage on the 4th of July in the playoffs. Just terrible. That's not Milwaukee's fault. Okay, and so you go to the Eastern Conference Finals when Trae Young got hurt, towards the end of Game 3. Well, Giannis got hurt the next game, and they still won the series. And so in the NBA Finals, they took advantage of what Phoenix gave them. Phoenix didn't close down the stretch the way Milwaukee did. People are going to forget that Phoenix in Game 4, they had a 2-1 lead in the series at that point, obviously. The Phoenix had a 9-point lead in the fourth quarter on the road. But Milwaukee executed better down the stretch. Game 5, Phoenix had a 16-point lead. Bucks proceeded to outscore him by 30 and wind up winning the basketball game because they closed better than Phoenix. Then in Game 6, simply put, they rebounded better. They made things tough on Chris Paul. Devin Booker had an off night. And so what you got to say is every champion gets breaks. Every single champion gets 1 break or 2 or 5. But you give the Bucks credit for capitalizing on the breaks. Look at the Phoenix Suns. They also got breaks, right? Anthony Davis was hurt in the first round. Jamal Murray was hurt in the second round. And Kawhi Leonard was hurt in the Western Conference Finals. And they didn't win. So the Bucks did a better job of capitalizing on their other teams' misfortunes than Phoenix did. So don't blame Milwaukee that they got all the breaks that they needed to get, because every champion does. Every single champion gets 1 break or another. There's nothing wrong with that. You got to be a little lucky. So no, there's no asterisk next to the Bucks championship whatsoever. Around any championship for that matter. I just, I hate it when someone achieves success and the first thing people try to do is discredit it. They're the champions. They earned it. Okay, they played like all other 29 teams in a condensed season, 72 games, obviously with the COVID protocols. They handled it better than everybody else. And so they're holding the Larry O'Brien Trophy today. And right now, I believe as we speak, having a very good time. Having a very good time in the city of Milwaukee with those fans who haven't seen a championship in half a century. So props to them, props to the Bucks. And should be an interesting offseason, which again I'll get into a little bit next week. But should be interesting. Also, just throwing this out there as well before we move on to J.R. Jones, is that NBA Finals Game 6 was the most watched game since 2019, the 5th most watched non-football sporting event since the pandemic began, and the Finals topped 2003 and 2007 in addition to the bubble in ratings. But the NBA is dying. So let's go to Jerry. One thing we know about Jerry Jones is he's never short on sound bites. He's great for shows like this. He's great for every show that does any sports talk, any football talk. As a Cowboys fan, he drives me crazy. But nothing I can do about it. Nothing I can do about it. So a couple things Jerry said. I'll go to the story first that he told, because something else Jerry Jones is never short on his stories. I mean, I'd love to be in his offense at the Star overlooking the practice fields. And here's some of the stories that he has, because he could probably make a movie or 2 or 10 of some of the wacky stories and even wackier analogies that he has. But he was talking about 1994, I guess it was. After the Cowboys won their second straight Super Bowl, big blowout over the Buffalo Bills, 2 straight years. And as the world knows, Jimmy Johnson ended up getting fired. And we all know egos collided. They got tired of one another. And they both said, we can't do this anymore. Jerry fires Jimmy, hires Barry Switzer. And so according to Jerry, when Barry Switzer comes into his office not long after Jimmy Johnson's firing, Barry says, can we bring, where's Jimmy? That was his question. Where's Jimmy? Barry said, Jimmy's gone. We're trying to make you the new head coach of the Cowboys. He said, where's Jimmy? And Jerry said, why are you so interested with where Jimmy Johnson is? And he said, how did you two blank this thing up? He said, I want to get both y'all in a room and figure out how y'all blank this thing up. And Jerry Jones said, years later, I can understand and I can recognize, yeah, we did. And I did. That was on me. So I don't know if this is a PR stunt, because Jerry can be hard to figure out at times. I don't know if this is the fact that he's, I believe, 78 years old. He's talked often about his mortality. And, he knows he doesn't have forever. And, he wants to get another Super Bowl. He hasn't seen one in 25. It's going to be 26. Once this next Super Bowl rolls around, it'll be 26 years since the Cowboys last hoisted the Lombardi. And it drives him crazy. And I get that. And he also said he would do anything, and he actually got choked up when he was saying this. He'd do anything at all costs to win a Super Bowl. Now, the question with that is it at all costs Jerry's way? Or is it at all costs? Robert Kraft would say, well, at all costs. Right? Bob Kraft doesn't have to do it his way. He let Brady be the greatest quarterback ever, and Belichick be one of the best coaches in the NFL. He didn't step in. We saw Bob Kraft. There's a lot of owners in the NFL that we don't even see, like the Hunt family in Kansas City, Clark Hunt. We never see him. I've only seen Clark Hunt twice at a Chiefs game, after they won the Super Bowl and at the banner ceremony. That's it. You never see the Hunt family. The Glazer family, you barely see them. The family that owns the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, a lot of these teams, the owners prefer to remain invisible. We take care of what we're supposed to. Coach, you do your job. Players, you do yours. Jerry, not so much. He likes to be in the spotlight. It's why the Cowboys are, for the third time, on Hard Knocks. And 20 teams have never been on Hard Knocks. So, Jerry loves the spotlight. Is he being, I don't know, is it a PR stunt? Because, Stephen Jones said, and this sounded pretty legit. I don't think he did just said this just because. Stephen Jones said one of his biggest regrets with the Cowboys is not getting Dak signed earlier, which I knocked the Cowboys time and show again, because I said, look, the longer you wait, prices are going to go up. He wanted $30 million in 2018. You didn't want to pay him that. Okay, so by 2019, you were willing to pay him the $30 million. Well, he wanted 35. Well, they didn't do that. And so a year later, they're willing to pay him 35. He wants 40. So finally this year they said, we're going to go and pay him the 40 before it goes to 45, because Dak knows by the time his contract expires, the TV deal is going to come in, salary cap's going to bump up, and he's going to get an even bigger deal 4 years from now. And so the Cowboys handle this horribly until they finally mercifully signed Dak Prescott to a long-term deal. I don't think Steve Jones was just messing around saying that. I think he truly means that. Jerry, I have no doubts Jerry wants to win a Super Bowl. I have no doubts about that. But does he want to do it Jerry's way? You know? In Tampa Bay, it's not the Glazers' way. It's Tom's way. The greatest quarterback ever. In Kansas City, it's not the Hunt's way. It's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's way. Obviously, it works. Dallas, no. I mean, they obviously 2 years after Jimmy's firing, they won a third Super Bowl in the 1990s. But I mean, come on, that was one of the greatest rosters in NFL history. They had the same roster essentially as they had the first two Super Bowls. And oh, by the way, they added the greatest cornerback ever, Deion Sanders. They couldn't lose the Super Bowl, right? There was no way they weren't going to be the champions by January of 1996. And so with the Cowboys, what has the story been? Distractions. This is why I said I don't think them being on Hard Knocks is as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. There's always distractions. Last year, everybody dealt with the distraction of COVID, but there was the Dak Prescott contract hanging over everybody's head. A year before that, it was Zeke's contract. There's always something. Always something. So, is Jerry being for real? Maybe. He got choked up. Unless you're an actor, it's kind of difficult to fake that. But I don't know. So let's go to what's next? Oklahoma and Texas. This caught me off guard this morning. According to multiple sources, both Oklahoma and Texas want to move to the SEC. Okay. Well, first of all, it's not like you don't have to be a genius to figure this out. If that happens, the Big Ten is dead. Who are you going to have? Iowa State running the conference? Iowa State has a very good athletic program, but not even close to as iconic as the Oklahoma Sooners. And certainly in football, well, heck, not to disrespect Oklahoma, but in football, the Texas Longhorns. Texas is a good basketball program. Oklahoma does as well. Oklahoma has an unbelievable softball program. So, two of the iconic and elite athletic programs in the entire nation would move to the SEC. I'll talk about it in the context of college football since it is the most watched college sport, without a question. It gets as many ratings, it's sometimes more than pro football at times because, I mean, it's huge. As great as college basketball is, it'll never surpass the NBA. College baseball obviously won't surpass Major League Baseball. You get the idea. In regards to the playoff, we already know the SEC is the best conference of the Power 5 programs, without a question. You've got powerhouse after powerhouse after powerhouse. You got Alabama and Georgia and Auburn and Florida and LSU. You got a lot of great all-time programs in the conference. You add two more, you will have three teams of the four in the college football playoff. Because Bama, we all know Bama's going to be in next year. I think Georgia has a shot to get in. I think Georgia's definitely going to win the SEC East and, probably lose to Bama in the championship game, but wouldn't be shocked if they got in. Obviously, if Oklahoma and Texas joined, the Big 12's out of the mix. Iowa State's not making the playoff. Obviously, you look at Ohio State. They probably get in over like a Notre Dame or somebody. And that's Oklahoma. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think the Big 12 is going to, just let the two most iconic programs in its conference just walk away. There's no, to the SEC, there's no way. They might be able to sleep at night if, say, Texas went to like the Pac-12 or the Big 10 or something. It would, if they left, the Big 12 would never be the same. Ever. I mean, they let Missouri and Texas A&M go to the SEC, and while that was probably a blow, they're like, you know what? We're not our bread isn't buttered with Missouri and Texas A&M. It's just not. It is with the Red River Showdown, though. You've got to have those two teams in your conference. There's no way this is going to happen. I would be shocked if it did. I would be stunned. But I don't think with as many iconic programs, I mean, the SEC would love it. They'd love it. And college football already feels like more of a Southern sport than anything. Because save for Ohio State, Notre Dame, obviously Oklahoma, the sport is the Pac-12 is irrelevant right now. Oregon's good, but not even close to the level as Alabama, Florida, Georgia. I think Auburn has a bounce back year. I think Ole Miss is formidable. They're not in that league. They're not in that same class. And the Big 12 isn't going to commit virtual athletic program branding suicide by letting those two teams go to who everybody knows is the king, and that's the SEC. There's no way they'll let that happen. There's no way that they will let that transpire. It would be the end of the Big 12 as we know it. And for the SEC, just imagine a conference that has Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Auburn, LSU. It'd be insane. It would be absolutely insane. And there's no way they're going to let it happen. Final topic. Is this our last topic? We got time for one more quick one after this. But this is a big one. Russell Westbrook. There's rumors that the Lakers are looking to trade for an all-star point guard. And I've said on this show before, I think Washington is going to trade both Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook this offseason. I think they realize, look, Westbrook's at the end of his prime. Beal's one of the 5 best scorers in the league, but where's it really gotten us? I think Washington's just going to go straight into the rebuild. So I think both are going to get traded. And Washington's going to go into the tank. They'll be one of the worst teams in basketball for the next couple of years. Just go into a rebuild. But I think if the Los Angeles Lakers trade for Russell Westbrook, it would be the single dumbest move they could possibly make this offseason. We know they need a point guard. We know Dennis Schroeder was a big disappointment for them last year. And he's not coming back considering the amount of money he's asking for. I proposed Kyle Lowry multiple times. Another name I thought about, though, a guy who is a free agent. He's a restricted free agent, but the team doesn't really want him, is Lonzo Ball coming back to the team he was drafted, the LA Lakers. Why? First of all, Lonzo, each year, and this always speaks to, I always love this because it speaks to a player's work ethic, because everybody in the league's talented. It's the NBA, for crying out loud. All 450 players are immensely talented. Not everybody treats basketball the same as other players. Lonzo Ball takes basketball seriously because every year, his first year in the NBA, a guard, he shot 40% from the free throw line. We make fun of Giannis sometimes. He's not 40% bad. Lonzo Ball shot 40% from the line his rookie year. He now shoots 78%. Not amazing, but fairly reliable. He's now a 38% three-point shooter. You'll take that after the way that ugly jump shot looked when he first came in. He's put muscle onto his body. Now, he's still young. He's, I think, 22 years old. I think he is 22, 23. He's still very young. So he's just going to improve and get better and get better. And he is the definition of a pass-first point guard. He is really the definition of a true point guard. Like a Stockton, like a Jason Kidd. Not saying he's going to be as good as those guys, but he's that style of player. He's long. He's a great defensive player. He's a great. defensive guard. And as good of a defensive team, as great of a defensive team, really, they were number one as the Lakers were last year. You add Lonzo to that mix, now you got something. And you won't be paying him near what you'll be paying Russell Westbrook. I mean, let's just talk about the salaries. We'll get into fit in a second. Let's talk about the salaries. Next year, if they traded for Russ, they'd be playing three guys. $44 million, which Westbrook is going to make this coming season. LeBron is going to make $41 million this upcoming season, and Anthony Davis is going to make $33. You'll have no bench at all. None. You know, if say the Bucks, obviously they never do this. If the new champion Milwaukee Bucks pay Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday what the Lakers would pay those three if Russell Westbrook went there, Pat Connaughton wouldn't be there, Brook Lopez wouldn't be there, Bobby Portis wouldn't be there, PJ Tucker wouldn't be there. They wouldn't have the money to pay for these guys. There's no way. They wouldn't have a bench. You got to have depth to win a championship. I don't think the Lakers have it to begin with. You add Russ, you'll never have it, right? I mean, listen, there's the luxury tax, and the Lakers obviously are one of the most valuable sports businesses and brands in the world. I don't think they'll go that deep into the luxury tax and pay that big of a fine to the National Basketball Association. There's no way. And then fit. How do I say this nicely? Russell Westbrook is a bad fit on a team that wants to win a championship. He's still a great player. He's still going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But he drives me crazy. And I think he drives a lot of his teammates crazy. Because we know Russ just completed his 13th year in the league. We know he cannot shoot. We know. We know Giannis can't shoot. But when he misses a couple of shots or air balls, ooh, that don't work. Let me go inside and get buckets on centers. Let me go where I know my strength is. Russ just keeps jacking them. He just keeps shooting them. He shot 31% from three this year. He's a bad three-point shooter. LeBron has improved his three-point shot, but you would not call him a great shooter. Anthony Davis, you want his butt down low. And he's a very streaky three-point shooter. So Russell Westbrook handling the ball. LeBron, as great as he is, he's never been a good off-ball player. It's just, he's never been. When he's initiating the offense, that's when he's at his best. Getting other teammates involved, scoring the basketball himself. Same with Russ, except he's way less efficient, has way less of a basketball IQ than LeBron, and has never been a winning player. Russ, since Kevin Durant left him, has won one playoff series. One. And we suddenly think you just plug him into the Lakers and it's going to be a perfect fit. He had Kevin Durant and James Harden, albeit not the James Harden we know now, who's one of the best scorers in the league, but a very good player at that time. And he stunk up the finals that year. Was awful. In the playoffs, year in and year out. Awful. Gets cooked by the opposing point guard. Lakers want to add him. They want to add that guy. They would be out of the championship picture if they did it. You'd be sacrificing depth because you would have no money left. You would go into the luxury tax because you'd be paying Westbrook $44 million. And by the way, next season he's going to make $47 million. LeBron this year is going to make 41. Next year he's going to make 44 at age 38 years old. And AD, as brittle as he is, as injured a star as we have in the league, he's going to make 33 this year, 37 next year. So a bad problem will only get worse. There's no way you should do this if you were Rob Pelinka and the Los Angeles Lakers. They would be idiots to make this trade. Lonzo Ball, I think, perfectly fits. Kyle Lowry, I think, would be a great fit as well. Veteran leadership. We know he can still play. He's not an all-star anymore, but he can still play. We've seen him have some solid performances in the playoffs, certainly in the Raptors 2019 run. When Kyle Lowry isn't the number one option, like he was even the number two option which he was with DeMar DeRozan all those years ago in Toronto, well, he'd be at best the number three. I know the Lakers really like Talen Horton-Tucker. Maybe does he emerge as a serviceable NBA player and a serviceable scorer over Kyle Lowry? Who knows? But a best case scenario, Kyle Lowry would be the three. That's a pretty good three to have, even at this stage in his career. Westbrook would be a horrible fit. Horrible fit. Can't shoot. Has no self-awareness late in games. There's no way. There's no way I'd do it if I were the Lakers. I think it would be literally take the Lakers out of the championship picture. So, last topic. This broke about an hour before we came on the show. That's why I said we actually had time for one more topic. Is that the National Football League has come up with a new rule that, because what we know last year is it was a crazy NFL season, obviously because of the pandemic. Amazingly, no games got canceled. All 256 games were played. Not all of them on time, but they were played. And it was, you had a lot of positive tests. You had some outbreaks. I remember the Titans early in the season had an outbreak. I remember the Ravens late in the season, the last month of the regular season. They had an outbreak and were throwing in backups in a game against the Steelers that was played on a Wednesday afternoon. That's how crazy the season was last year. You had a game that was supposed to be played on Thanksgiving, played the following Wednesday afternoon. The NFL, it was their first season ever where a game was played every day of the week. They had a game played on obviously on Sunday, Monday, and some Saturday games. They had a Christmas game on Friday. You had the Thursday night slate, and you had the Ravens Steelers who played on a Wednesday. So there you go. So this year, they are going to say, look, we saw the rules in regards to vaccinations. If you reach 85%, the 85% threshold of your team is vaccinated, okay, the rules are essentially like they were in 2019 when everything was normal. You don't have to wear masks. You don't have to get daily testing. You can bring your family on road trips. You can pretty much eat at any restaurant you want. You can, whatever religious affiliation is, you can, go involve with that. Now it's pretty much everything in reverse if you don't reach the 85% vaccination threshold. And so what the NFL is saying is, okay, only 14 of the 32 teams have reached 85%. So the NFL said they will implement a policy to where if a team, for example, say it stays this way, hopefully there will be more teams that, more than 14 that does reach the 85%. But if the other teams that don't reach the 85%, if they have a COVID outbreak and they can't get it resolved to where it's safe to play their next game, their upcoming game, it'll be forfeited, and they will be the loss will go on their record in their playoff chase. So they won't even get an opportunity to play a 60-minute football game. Say it happens before week one. The Seahawks play the Colts, for example. The Seahawks play the Colts in week one. And if the Colts have a COVID outbreak and it doesn't get resolved, the Seahawks are 1-0 and the Colts are 0-1. That's essentially what they are saying. So there won't be a week 19. There won't be a week in the NFL. They have to postpone the playoffs. Like, no, we are playing these games. There's no excuse not to be ready. There's no excuse not to be vaccinated because, thank God, in this country, we do have the resources. We do have a great supply of vaccines to protect yourself from the virus. And so, NFL saying, okay, you don't have to but it'll cost you. We've heard, certain players, Cole Beasley, who have been against this. Okay. You won't get the same privileges that other teams get for taking this thing seriously and trying to stay as safe as possible. Because remember, we're going to have full stadiums this season in the NFL. Because you had full arenas, the finals, and it was so great to see, by the way. It was so great to have fans back. I'm so glad that's empty, hopefully, pray to God, empty arenas and stadiums is a thing of the past, and we continue to get closer and closer and closer to normal. That was just great. So NFL stadiums will be full. A lot of times you see players interacting with fans. Maybe they'll sign a football or sign a pair of gloves or a jersey. Right? So there's that interaction with the fans. God forbid a player gives it to the fans. God forbid a fan gives it to a player. All of these things factor into where the NFL says, you know what? No excuses. Get vaccinated. Take this thing seriously. Stay safe. Let's get back to normal. I agree with it. I agree with the NFL. So that'll be interested. Hopefully we don't have any forfeited games. Hopefully this rule never has to come into effect. But Roger Goodell, the NFL says no excuses. Everybody's got to be accountable. So with that, again, probably the most loaded show we've had all year. You had a championship that was won. You had an owner who loves to talk, said something else. You have two Big 12 programs that want to go to the best Power 5 conference in the SEC. What else do you have? You had the Lakers wanting to trade for a guy who has never had success in the playoffs and is a bad fit with the team and is going to be crazy expensive. Whew. All right. Well, with that is all the time we have for today's show. I know the schedule's been a little weird. It'll get back to normal on Monday. I'm not going to do a show tomorrow, but it'll get back to normal on Monday. It'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. So hope everybody has a great weekend. Continue to stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out.